The alarms had stopped screaming. That was what made it worse. The containment chamber stood in uneasy silence, heat still warping the air above reinforced alloy walls. Scorch marks climbed 20 meters high where something very small had decided it did not like being touched. Hatchling X-09 stood in the center of the chamber. Small, golden, and classified as the most dangerous draconic birth ever recorded. Its scales shimmered with unstable light, like lightning trapped beneath translucent armor. Energy readings pulsed erratically across the observation screens above. Internal combustion spikes. Sudden temperature surges. Microdetonations in the air every time it inhaled too sharply. 2 elite dragon handlers were already in medical stasis. 3 suppression fields had failed. The Empire had run out of confident experts. Maintain distance, a senior researcher ordered from behind reinforced glass. Do not initiate proximity unless cleared. Inside the chamber, the hatchling released a thin, fractured screech. Not loud, but sharp enough to vibrate through the alloy floor. Heat spiked again. Temperature climbing. Containment holding. For now. The problem wasn't that the hatchling attacked. The problem was that it reacted. To movement. To armor. To raised voices. To authority. The more dominant the presence, the more violently it flared. They had expected aggression. They had bred for strength. They had not expected volatility. In a maintenance corridor 1 level below, Elias Ward adjusted the strap on his utility cart. He was not elite. He was not armored. He was not particularly impressive. In fact, if the Empire kept rankings for physical capability, Elias would have placed somewhere near the bottom. Thin frame. Chronic joint weakness. Slight limp in his left leg from an old structural collapse accident. Cleared for light-duty assignments only. Which was how he ended up scheduled to replace air filtration units in the observation wing of Containment Sector 9. He had no idea what Sector 9 housed. He had not asked. Elias never asked. He simply worked. When he entered the upper corridor outside the containment chamber, the air felt warmer than expected. He frowned slightly. That's not normal, he muttered to himself. Inside the chamber, Hatchling X-09 reared back suddenly. Energy readings spiked violently. Containment spike. Suppression field priming. The hatchling slammed one small claw into the alloy floor. The impact cracked the surface. For something barely larger than a hunting hound, the force was catastrophic. It's reacting again. Clear all unnecessary personnel. Elias stepped around the corner at exactly the wrong moment. The security doors had not yet sealed. He froze when he saw the chamber. The golden creature in the center turned its head. Its eyes locked onto him. Every guard in the corridor shouted at once. Human. Back away. Retreat immediately. Elias didn't move. Not because he was brave. Because he was confused. The hatchling's internal glow surged. Then, stuttered. Energy readings flickered. Why did the spike pause? Who authorized civilian entry? Elias looked at the creature. Up close, it didn't look like a weapon. It looked overwhelmed. Its chest rose and fell too fast. Heat shimmered violently around its small body. Every armored guard in sight stood rigid, weapons ready, posture aggressive. Elias noticed something simple. Everyone in the room looked like a threat. He slowly lowered his cart handle. I'm just replacing filters, he said quietly, though no one was listening. The hatchling tilted its head. The glow beneath its scales pulsed erratically. A guard activated partial suppression. The hatchling shrieked and lashed out instinctively. Flame erupted against the containment wall. Stand down, the researcher barked. You're escalating it. Elias flinched at the blast, but he didn't run. He had seen frightened animals before. He had grown up around stray dogs that snapped when cornered. He recognized the look. Not anger. Overstimulation. The hatchling's gaze returned to him. This time, it didn't flare. It watched. The guards shifted their stance, stepping between Elias and the chamber. The hatchling's glow surged again. Energy rising. Everyone hold position. Elias did something that made every professional in the room stop breathing. He stepped forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just one step. The hatchling's internal temperature spiked. Then leveled. What just happened? A researcher whispered. Elias raised his hands slowly, palms open. I'm not here to hurt you, he said softly. The guard stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You are not cleared for contact, one barked. Elias didn't answer. The hatchling took a step toward the glass. Energy readings flickered wildly, then dropped by 2%. The researchers froze. That's impossible. Another step. The hatchling's breathing slowed slightly. Do not approach further, the commander ordered. Elias hesitated. He looked at the small dragon again. The creature's claws flexed against the cracked alloy floor. It didn't lunge. It didn't flare. It moved closer to the barrier separating them. Energy levels dipped again. Silence fell over the observation deck. Elias slowly lowered himself to one knee. The motion was unthreatening. Small. The hatchling mirrored him. It crouched. The glow beneath its scales steadied, not dim, but controlled. Open the inner partition, a researcher whispered. Absolutely not, the commander snapped. But the data was undeniable. For the first time since hatching, the most dangerous dragon in Imperial history was not escalating. It was calming. Because of him. Elias didn't know that. He only knew the creature looked tired. It's okay, he said softly. The hatchling pressed its snout lightly against the reinforced glass. No flame. No detonation. Just contact. Energy readings dropped another 3%. The room fell completely silent. Someone swallowed audibly. The commander looked between the screens and the kneeling human. Why, he muttered, is it stabilizing? No one had an answer. Because the Empire had measured strength in dominance. And the weakest human in the room didn't feel like a threat at all. Inside the chamber, the hatchling lowered itself fully to the floor. Its glow pulsed steady. Waiting. And for the first time since its violent birth, it was not trying to burn the world. It was trying to reach him. Fire. Do not open that partition. The order rang sharp and absolute through the observation deck. No one moved. Below, separated by a reinforced barrier layered with suppression sigils and kinetic dampeners, Hatchling X-09 remained crouched against the glass. Its internal glow pulsed, bright, dangerous, but no longer chaotic. Elias stayed on one knee. He wasn't thinking about Empire-level decisions. He was thinking about how the creature's breathing still looked too fast. It's not attacking, a junior researcher whispered. Because the barrier is active, the commander snapped. Negative, another scientist interrupted, eyes wide on the monitors. Barrier fluctuation at 40%. It's not suppression that's stabilizing it. Everyone stared at the numbers. Energy spikes had flattened into steady waves. Heat output down 12%. Combustion rhythm normalizing. That's impossible, someone muttered. Elias tilted his head slightly at the hatchling. The creature mimicked the motion. A thin curl of warm air fogged the reinforced glass between them. He lifted one hand slowly and placed it against the barrier. The hatchling hesitated. Then pressed its snout against the exact same spot on the other side. The readings dipped again. Silence swallowed the chamber. Open the partition, the researcher breathed. The commander rounded on him. Are you insane? That creature melted a suppression wall an hour ago. It's stabilizing because of proximity, the scientist insisted. If we maintain barrier separation, we'll never confirm. The commander's gaze shifted to Elias. The frail human in maintenance overalls. Thin arms. Slight limp. No armor. No weapons. He looked like the least threatening organism in the building. Which, at that moment, might have been the point. Human, the commander barked, voice hard. Step back from the barrier. Elias glanced over his shoulder. I think it's scared, he said quietly. It is a weapon-class hatchling. It's a baby. The commander clenched his jaw. Behind him, the Emperor himself had joined the observation deck, silent and watchful. No one had noticed him enter. His presence thickened the air. What are the numbers? He asked calmly. Stabilizing, Your Majesty, the senior researcher replied. Energy output reduced 20% from peak. The Emperor's gaze dropped to the chamber floor. To the small dragon pressed against the glass. To the kneeling human mirroring its posture. Open it, he said. The commander stiffened. Your Majesty. Open the partition. The order carried no room for argument. The inner barrier slid upward slowly with a hydraulic hiss. Every guard raised their weapons. Suppression fields charged to full. Elias didn't move. The hatchling's glow surged briefly at the sudden change. Energy readings spiked. Spike detected. Hold suppression. Then the hatchling stepped forward. Out of the containment circle. Into open space. It did not lunge. It did not flare. It approached Elias cautiously, claws tapping softly against alloy. Elias swallowed once. His heart hammered, but he kept his breathing slow. He lowered himself fully to the floor, sitting cross-legged now. Smaller. Non-threatening. The hatchling stopped inches from him. Its eyes were brilliant gold. Its chest glowed dangerously bright. If it ignited at this distance, there would be nothing left of him. "Step away," the commander ordered, voice tight. Elias did not respond. The hatchling leaned forward. Its snout brushed against Elias's shoulder. Energy readings exploded upward. Spike. Then immediately dropped. Lower than before. Temperature decreasing. Combustion stabilizing. The hatchling made a small, uncertain sound. Not a roar. Not a shriek. A whimper. Elias blinked. "You don't like all the noise, do you?" he murmured. The hatchling shifted closer. Its body heat washed over him like an open furnace. He should have recoiled. He didn't. Slowly, carefully, he lifted one hand and rested it against the side of its neck. The observation deck erupted in shouts. Contact made. Suppression ready. Stand by. But the data overrode panic. Energy output dropped by 30%. Internal combustion smoothing. Heart rate sinking. The hatchling let out a slow exhale. Warm air, not flame. Then, in a movement that froze the Empire in place, the most dangerous hatchling ever recorded climbed into Elias's lap. Claws hooked gently into his uniform. Head pressed against his chest. Energy readings plummeted into stable ranges. Combustion cycle normalized, the researcher whispered in disbelief. Impossible. Elias winced slightly under the weight but adjusted carefully, cradling the creature instinctively. There was no technique. No training. He just supported it the way you would something fragile. The hatchling's glow softened from violent flare to steady ember. It curled tighter against him. Guard stared, weapon still raised. The commander lowered his rifle slowly. The Emperor stepped closer to the glass. "Explain," he said quietly. The senior researcher swallowed. "Your Majesty, the hatchling reacts violently to perceived dominance. Armor, weapons, authoritative posture, these all spike its combustion glands." "And the human?" the Emperor asked. The scientist looked at Elias. "At present, he registers as non-threatening." A pause. Then softer. "As safe." Inside the chamber, Elias shifted slightly. The hatchling responded instantly, claws tightening. Its glow flickered. He adjusted again. Gentler. The glow steadied. "It's sinking," the researcher breathed. "Their heart rates are aligning." The Emperor watched in silence. The Empire had measured strength in power output, in combat capability, in dominance displays. Yet the most volatile creature they had ever produced had stabilized. In the arms of the physically weakest human alive. Elias stroked the side of the hatchling's neck gently. "You're okay," he murmured. The hatchling's eyes closed halfway. Its breathing slowed. No alarms. No spikes. No fire. Just warmth. The commander shook his head slowly. "This is not possible." The Emperor's gaze remained fixed on the chamber. "No," he said softly. "It is simply not what we expected." In Elias's arms, the storm quieted. And for the first time since its violent birth, the Empire's most dangerous weapon looked like what it truly was. A frightened baby. For 10 full minutes, no one in the observation deck spoke. They didn't dare. Because any sudden noise, any sharp command, might shatter whatever impossible equilibrium had formed inside that containment chamber. Hatchling X-09 lay curled in Elias's lap. The creature that had cracked alloy flooring and hospitalized elite handlers now breathed in slow, steady rhythms against the chest of a human maintenance worker. Energy readings glowed calm blue across the monitors. Combustion stable. Thermal output normalized. Internal core oscillation synchronized. With him, the senior researcher whispered, the volatility disappears. The Emperor stood still, watching the chamber below. "Not disappears," he said quietly. "Balances." Inside, Elias shifted slightly to adjust his leg. The hatchling's claws tightened instinctively. Its glow flickered brighter for half a second. Every guard tensed. Elias didn't flinch. "Easy," he murmured softly. He didn't sound commanding. He sounded tired. Like someone calming a nervous animal in the middle of the night. The hatchling's glow softened again. It pressed its head more firmly against his chest. The researchers leaned closer to their screens. "Neural response activity aligning," one said. "It's not just stabilizing physically," another added. "It's regulating emotionally." Dragons do not regulate emotionally, the commander snapped reflexively. The senior researcher didn't look up. They do at this stage. The Emperor's gaze sharpened. Explain. The scientist swallowed. Hatchlings are hypersensitive to environmental threat indicators. Posture, tone, body tension, armor presence. And, the Emperor prompted. And every handler we assigned entered with containment protocol. The commander bristled. Standard safety procedure. Yes, the researcher agreed. Which the hatchling interpreted as aggression. The Emperor looked back down at Elias. The human's shoulders were relaxed. His breathing slow. His body small. Unimposing. He wasn't projecting authority. He wasn't trying to dominate the bond. He wasn't trying to control it. He was simply there. Inside the chamber, Elias shifted one hand gently to stroke the hatchling's neck. The creature let out a low, almost content rumble. A sound that had never been recorded from it before. You're overstimulated, Elias murmured softly. The observation deck microphones picked up every word. Too many lights. Too much noise. Too many people staring. The hatchling's tail curled loosely around his leg. Heat radiated outward, but controlled. Warm. Not explosive. You don't need to prove anything, Elias said. The Emperor's eyes flicked to the researchers. Language analysis. Tone steady. Heart rate low. Cortisol minimal. The commander frowned. He's not afraid. The researcher nodded slowly. That may be the difference. Elias leaned his head slightly forward. The hatchling mimicked the motion. The synchronization was subtle. But undeniable. You're not dangerous because you're strong, Elias whispered. You're dangerous because you're scared. The hatchling's internal glow pulsed once, bright, then steady. The Emperor inhaled slowly. Remove the exterior observation lights, he ordered. The chamber dimmed slightly. The hatchling visibly relaxed. Energy output dropped another 2%. The researchers stared at the numbers like they were watching a miracle. It's imprinting, one breathed. No, the senior scientist corrected. It's choosing. The word carried weight. Dragons did not imprint like mindless creatures. They selected. Elias adjusted his grip slightly when the hatchling shifted again. It climbed higher against him, claws hooking gently into his maintenance jacket. Guards winced. But the claws did not pierce skin. The hatchling tucked its head under his chin. Fully exposed. Fully vulnerable. A position of absolute trust. The commander stared at the feed in disbelief. That creature destroyed reinforced suppression walls. The Emperor's voice was calm. And yet it does not destroy him. Inside the chamber, Elias let out a soft breath. I don't think you like armor, he murmured. The hatchling gave a faint rumble. Or loud voices. Another rumble. Or being treated like a weapon. The rumble deepened slightly. The researchers exchanged looks. It's reacting to relational cues, one said quietly. Not dominance hierarchies. The Emperor turned to face the chamber fully. 4 generations, he said softly, we measured strength by force. His gaze returned to the fragile human holding the Empire's most volatile hatchling. Perhaps we were incomplete. Below, Elias rested his cheek lightly against the hatchling's head. He didn't know he was reshaping imperial philosophy. He just knew the creature felt small under the heat. The hatchling let out a long, steady exhale. No sparks. No flare. Just warmth. Its glow dimmed to a soft ember pulse. Sleep. The most dangerous hatchling ever recorded fell asleep in the arms of the weakest human alive. The observation deck remained silent. Because the data confirmed what no one wanted to admit. It wasn't dominance that calmed the storm. It was safety. And only one person in the entire empire had offered it. They did not celebrate the bond. They tested it. Within hours of hatchling X-09 falling asleep in Elias Ward's arms, half the Imperial Council was demanding reassessment. This is reckless. A weapon-class dragon cannot be entrusted to a maintenance worker. The human is physically compromised. His medical file lists chronic joint instability. He cannot defend himself, let alone the Empire's most volatile asset. Elias was not present for those discussions. He was still seated inside the containment chamber, back against the alloy wall, the hatchling curled against his chest like a furnace gone quiet. The Emperor stood before the council chamber windows, overlooking the testing arena below. We do not decide this by opinion, he said calmly. We decide it by proof. The next day, the Empire staged a controlled stress trial. The chamber was reinforced further. LAD suppression fields primed. Combat drones stationed along the perimeter. Elias was briefed for the first time. "So, you're going to scare it on purpose?" he asked carefully. The senior researcher avoided eye contact. "We need to determine stability thresholds. It just stopped trying to melt the walls yesterday." The commander stepped forward. "If the bond fails under threat conditions, we cannot risk continued contact." Elias looked down at the hatchling. It blinked up at him. Its internal glow steady. "They're going to make noise," he murmured to it softly. The hatchling tilted its head. The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber speakers. "Begin simulation." The lights dimmed. The combat drones activated. A sharp metallic screech filled the chamber as holographic projections flared to life, simulated hostile dragons lunging forward with bared fangs and flaring wings. The hatchling reacted instantly. Its glow surged. Energy readings spiked violently. Combustion rising. Core temperature climbing. The hatchling leapt to its feet, placing itself between Elias and the projections. Flame erupted from its mouth, controlled at first, then widening. The alloy walls began to glow. Stabilize suppression. Hold position. Elias felt the heat blast against his face. He didn't retreat. The hatchling's body was rigid now, no longer frightened. Defensive. Protective. It snarled at the simulated threats. Its internal energy surged to levels previously recorded during containment breaches. "This is beyond safe threshold," the commander barked. "Shut down the simulation." "Negative," the Emperor ordered. "Observe." The hatchling launched forward. But not toward the drones. Toward Elias. It pressed its side against him, shielding him with its body while projecting flame outward. A living barrier. Energy readings peaked. Combustion critical. Elias reached out. Placed one hand against the hatchling's neck. "Easy," he said quietly. The word wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The hatchling's flames faltered. Energy output dipped. The projections continued lunging. The drones advanced. The hatchling snarled again. Flame building. Elias stepped forward slightly. Closer. His hand moved from the neck to the side of its jaw. "I'm right here." Energy dropped by 10%. The commander stared at the monitors. "That shouldn't be possible." The hatchling turned its head slightly toward Elias. Its breathing slowed. Flames narrowed from chaotic arcs to tight, focused streams that disabled the drones without overloading the chamber. Combustion stabilizing. Core oscillation normalizing. The holographic threats dissipated. The chamber lights returned to normal. The hatchling remained in front of Elias, chest heaving slightly, eyes scanning for danger. When none remained, it turned fully toward him. Lowered its head. Pressed its forehead against his sternum. Energy readings leveled out entirely. Silence consumed the observation deck. The Emperor spoke first. "Data. Bond is not passive," the senior researcher said quietly. "The hatchling does not weaken in his presence." The commander swallowed. "It strengthens." "Yes. But in controlled parameters." The Emperor's gaze never left the chamber below. "It does not calm because he suppresses it," he said. "It calms because it chooses him." Inside, Elias exhaled slowly. "You don't have to protect me from ghosts," he murmured. The hatchling's tail wrapped loosely around his leg. Not possessive. Anchored. The council chamber fell silent. Because every sensor reading confirmed what pride resisted. The most volatile dragon in Imperial history did not bond to the strongest warrior. It bonded to the one being who never tried to control it. The Emperor turned from the glass. "The bond stands," he declared. "Assign Elias Ward as primary guardian." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A human cannot guard a dragon of this magnitude. The Emperor's voice cut through them. "He does not guard it." A pause. "It guards him." Below, the hatchling curled once more into Elias's arms. Not because it was weak. Not because it was unstable. But because it had chosen its anchor. And the Empire, for the first time, had no argument left. 5 years later, the sky burned. Not metaphorically. Not ceremonially. It burned because something massive and hostile had entered Imperial space. 3 war carriers from the Vea Dominion tore through the outer defense ring, shields flaring, weapons primed. Their commanders had studied dragon combat patterns for decades. They had prepared for aerial superiority. They had prepared for flame storms. They had not prepared for this. The horizon split open with gold. A single shape broke through the cloud layer at impossible speed, wings spanning wider than the capital's central tower, scales blazing like molten sunfire. Designation X09 no longer appeared in official documents. It had a name now. Pyraxis. The most powerful dragon of its generation. Combat class. Strategic asset. Catastrophic output capability. Enemy targeting systems locked on. Pyraxis exhaled. The sky ceased to exist where the flame touched it. Not chaotic. Not wild. Perfectly directed annihilation. One war carrier folded inward under concentrated heat. The second attempted evasive maneuvers. Pyraxis banked with terrifying grace, cutting it in half mid-ascent. The third turned to retreat. It did not make it beyond atmosphere. From the command balcony, generals stared in stunned silence. Output at 70% capacity, a strategist whispered. 70, another breathed. That wasn't full force. Below the balcony, leaning casually against a railing, Elias Ward adjusted the brace around his wrist. He had not grown physically stronger over the years. Still thin. Still slightly limping. Still technically the weakest human on any measurable military scale. He did not wear armor. He did not command fleets. He held no rank beyond ceremonial advisory status. He simply watched the sky. When the final hostile vessel fell in flaming fragments beyond the horizon, Pyraxis did not circle in triumph. It descended. The impact of its landing shook the capital. Citizens instinctively ducked. Heat rolled across the city like summer lightning. Pyraxis folded its wings slowly. Its scales glowed bright gold, combat bright. Eyes blazing with residual fury. Guards stiffened. Even now, even after years, some still flinched at that glow. Pyraxis turned its head. Not toward the generals. Not toward the emperor. Toward Elias. The massive dragon lowered itself slowly. Stone cracked under its weight. And then, the most dangerous creature alive rested its colossal head in Elias Ward's hands. The glow beneath its scales dimmed from battle-bright to steady ember. Elias reached up carefully, placing one palm against the warm ridge of its jaw. "You're done," he murmured. The dragon exhaled. A soft gust of heat, not flame. The tremor in its chest eased. Energy readings across the capital dropped from combat surge to calm baseline. The generals watched in disbelief. "That creature just erased 3 war carriers," one whispered. "And now it's settling," the emperor answered quietly. Elias leaned his forehead briefly against Pyraxis's scales. "You overextended your left wing again," he said softly. A low rumble vibrated through the dragon's chest. Not defiance. Agreement. The emperor stepped closer. Years ago, he had questioned the bond. Now he did not. "Report," he asked the strategist. "Full containment of hostile forces. 0 civilian casualties." The emperor nodded. "Casualty count for Pyraxis?" "Minimal surface scorching. No structural damage." The emperor's gaze shifted to Elias. "Because he regulates it." Elias shook his head lightly. "I don't regulate anything." Pyraxis's massive eye opened slightly, golden and calm. "You don't need to," Elias added. "You just needed to know when to stop." The dragon's breathing slowed further. Its glow softened. The Empire had once believed strength meant dominance. That the most powerful dragon would bond to the most imposing handler. They had assigned armored elites. Decorated warriors. Commanders who projected authority. The hatchling had burned through them all. Because it never wanted control. It wanted safety. And the one human too physically fragile to dominate anything had offered exactly that. On the balcony, a young cadet asked quietly, "Why him?" The emperor did not look away from the scene below. "Because he never tried to hold the storm," he said. "He simply stood still long enough for it to trust him." Below, Pyraxis shifted slightly, curling one massive wing partially around Elias in instinctive protection. Not possessive. Protective. The strongest dragon alive. Guarding the weakest human in the Empire. Elias scratched lightly beneath its jaw. "Let's go inside," he said softly. The dragon rose, towering over the capital. But it moved carefully around him. Measured. Controlled. The storm that once threatened to burn the world had not disappeared. It had grown stronger. Faster. Deadlier. But it had also learned restraint. Because the most dangerous hatchling ever recorded had chosen its anchor. And the Empire finally understood. They called him the weakest human alive. But only he could hold the storm. And never be burned. Fire.